I built my first rental property with borrowed tools and a bad back in 1987. 3 units in Dayton, Ohio. Nothing fancy. Peeling paint, creaky stairs, a furnace that groaned every winter like it was dying. But they were mine. I fixed every broken pipe myself, collected rent in cash on the first of every month, and reinvested every dollar I didn't need to eat. My wife, Carol, used to joke that I loved those buildings more than I loved her. I didn't argue, because arguing would have wasted time I could spend working. Carol passed in 2009. Breast cancer. 12 weeks from diagnosis to the end. After that, the buildings weren't just investments anymore. They were the reason I got up in the morning. 37 years later, I own 42 residential units across 3 counties, a small commercial strip in Centerville, and a management company that runs it all. My son, my daughter-in-law, and 6 full-time employees depend on it. I am 68 years old, and I have spent every one of those years earning what I have. I never once thought my son was waiting for me to die. Last Thanksgiving, I arrived at my son's house 40 minutes early. He and his wife had invited the whole family, her parents, her sister, some cousins I'd met twice. I parked in the driveway and walked around to the back door the way I always did. It was cold, and I had a pie from the bakery Carol used to love, and I was feeling something close to grateful for the first time in months. The kitchen window was cracked open. I heard my son's voice before I touched the door handle. "I'm telling you, by spring it's done," he said. "The doctor said his blood pressure is through the roof. He's not managing it. He won't slow down. All we have to do is wait." His wife said something I couldn't make out. "The will is already written," my son said. "Everything goes to me. The management company, the properties, the accounts, all of it. And once it does, the first thing I'm doing is selling the Centerville strip and taking us to Europe for a month. That man has been dragging us along for 30 years, and I am done pretending I care about any of it." I stood on the back porch with a pie in my hands, and the cold going right through my coat. I did not go inside. I drove home, put the pie on my kitchen counter, sat down in the chair by the window where Carol used to read, and I stayed there for a long time. I want to be honest about what those first hours felt like, because I think people assume a man my age handles this kind of thing with dignity right away. I did not. I sat in that chair, and I felt something I had not felt since the week Carol died, a complete and total hollowness, like someone had reached in and taken the center out of me. My son's voice kept replaying in my head. All we have to do is wait. I had watched him grow up. I had coached his little league team. I had paid for his college, his wedding, his first car, the down payment on his house. I had given him a salary and a title and an office with his name on the door. And he was waiting for me to die so he could sell what I built and take a vacation. I did not sleep that night, or the night after. By the third day, the hollowness had started to harden into something else. Not anger exactly, something quieter than anger. Something that felt like clarity. I called my attorney on Monday morning. My attorney has handled my affairs for 22 years. He is a careful man, deliberate, not given to drama. I told him what I had heard. He listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I respect most about him. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want to know where I stand," I said, "and then I want to make some changes." We met in his office that Thursday. He walked me through everything, the will, the trust structure, the management company's operating agreement. My son was named as primary beneficiary across the board. He also held a 30% ownership stake in the management company, which I had transferred to him 3 years ago as a gesture of trust and succession planning. That 30% meant he had real authority. Not enough to override me, but enough to cause problems if things got contentious. My attorney advised me to be careful. "Don't move too fast," he said. "If he contests anything later, you want a clear record of your reasoning." I told him I understood, and then I told him what I actually wanted to do. He raised an eyebrow but didn't try to talk me out of it. The following Monday, I called my son into my office. Not his office, mine. The one with Carol's photograph on the credenza and 37 years of files in the cabinet behind my desk. I asked him to sit down. He sat across from me the way he always did, relaxed, one ankle crossed over his knee. He had his father's eyes and his mother's jaw, and for a moment I could see him at 7 years old, standing in my first rental unit, asking me why the ceilings were so low. "I want to talk to you about the business," I said. He nodded. "Sure, Dad. What's going on?" "I've been thinking about succession," I said. "I'm 68. My blood pressure has been high. I'm not going to be here forever, and I want to make sure this company is in good hands when I'm gone." Something shifted in his expression. Just slightly. Not guilt exactly, more like alertness. "I've decided to restructure," I said. "I'm going to step back from day-to-day operations. and I'd like you to take on full operational control, but not as an inheritance. As a responsibility. I want to see how you run it." He sat up a little straighter. "That sounds great, Dad. I've been ready for this for—" "There are conditions," I said. I slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. I had written it out by hand, which I knew would surprise him. My son expected PowerPoints and formal memos. Handwritten meant personal. He picked it up and read it. The conditions were specific. For the next 12 months, he would operate the company under my oversight. He would present monthly financial reports to me and to my attorney. He would make no asset sales, no major capital decisions, and no staffing changes without my written approval. At the end of 12 months, if the company was performing, if the tenants were well managed, if the employees were stable, and if he demonstrated what I called stewardship, a word I chose deliberately, I would transfer full control. If he did not meet those conditions, ownership would revert to a structure I had already drawn up, placing the assets in a charitable trust with a professional management firm. He read it twice. "A whole year?" he said. 12 months, I said, starting the 1st of January. "Dad, I've been working in this company for 11 years. You know what I'm capable of." "I know what you've been capable of when I was standing beside you," I said. "This is different." He put the paper down on the desk. His jaw was tight. "And if I don't agree to this?" I looked at him for a moment. Carol used to say that the most important thing a father can do is let his children feel the weight of their own choices. I had always thought she was talking about when they were teenagers. "Then I restructure without you," I said. "And I do it this week." He took the paper home. He called me twice that evening, and I didn't answer. His wife called once, and I didn't answer that either. The next morning he came into the office before anyone else arrived and sat down across from me without saying anything for almost a full minute. "Fine," he said. "I'll do it." I nodded. "Good. I want you to know I think this is excessive," he said. "I've earned more than a probationary period." "Maybe you have," I said. "Prove it." Those first weeks were difficult. Not because he failed, he didn't, not exactly. He showed up, he ran the meetings, he handled a difficult tenant dispute in February better than I expected. But there was a coldness between us that hadn't been there before. He knew something had shifted, even if he didn't know what I knew. I could see him trying to read me, trying to figure out why I had changed. His wife called me in February. She was warm and careful, and she said she was worried I was putting too much pressure on her husband. I told her I appreciated her concern and that the conditions remained unchanged. After we hung up, I sat for a long time thinking about what she might have said the night I stood on the back porch with that pie. March was when things started to change, and I want to be precise about this because the change was not what I expected. It did not happen all at once. It happened in small moments. In the 3rd week of March, one of my longest tenured tenants, a woman in her 70s who had rented from me for 19 years, called the office to say her furnace had stopped working. It was a Wednesday night, 38 degrees. In the past, my son would have called the maintenance line and logged a ticket. That night, he drove to her unit himself with a space heater from his own garage. He stayed until the repair crew arrived at 10 o'clock. He didn't tell me about it. I found out from the tenant, who left a voicemail the next morning that made me have to set the phone down and collect myself. In April, he flagged a contractor who had been overbilling us for 2 years. He caught it by going through invoices line by line, something nobody had done since I was doing it myself. He brought the documentation to me with a spreadsheet he had built on his own time. "I think we've overpaid this company by about $40,000 over the past 24 months, he said. "I'd like your permission to renegotiate the contract, and I think we should consider legal options for the overpayment." I looked at the spreadsheet. It was thorough, more thorough than I would have been. "Do it," I said. He recovered $31,000 by June. I want to be honest about something else, because I think this is the part people don't talk about enough. Watching my son become capable was not entirely comfortable. There is a particular kind of pride a father feels when his child surpasses him, and it is tangled up with grief and with the awareness that your own chapter is narrowing. I felt that in those months more than I can easily say. In July, he asked if we could have lunch. Not a business lunch, just lunch. We went to a diner I had been going to since before he was born. We ordered the same things we always ordered, and for a while we talked about nothing in particular. His kids. The summer heat. A property we were both eyeing in Springboro. Then he put his fork down and looked at me. "Dad," he said, "why did you really change the structure?" I looked at my coffee cup. "Something told me it was time," I said. He was quiet for a moment. "Was it something I did?" I looked up at him. He was 41 years old. He had his mother's jaw and a crease between his eyebrows that wasn't there 5 years ago. He looked, for the first time in a long time, genuinely uncertain. "Do you love this company?" I asked. He blinked. It wasn't the answer he expected. "I'm asking you honestly," I said. "Not whether you're good at it. Not whether it provides for your family. Do you actually love it? The way your mother loved her garden. The way I love it. Do you feel something when you walk through one of those units?" He didn't answer right away. He picked up his fork and set it down again. Outside, a truck went past on the street. "I didn't used to," he said finally. "I thought I did. But I think I mostly loved what it represented. The security. What it would mean someday." He paused. "The last 6 months have been different. I don't entirely understand why." I nodded slowly. "Because you're doing the work," I said. "And the work teaches you something that the inheritance never could." He looked at me for a long moment, and then something crossed his face that I had not seen there in years, maybe decades. Something that looked like shame. "Dad," he said, "I need to tell you something." I waited. "Last Thanksgiving," he said, "before dinner, I said something to my wife that I—" He stopped. He pressed his fingers against his mouth, the way he did when he was a little boy trying not to cry. "I said things about you that I don't know how to—" "I know," I said. He looked up sharply. "I was there," I said. "I came early. I heard you through the kitchen window." The color left his face. "I didn't go inside," I said. "I drove home. And I spent about 3 days feeling like I'd been hollowed out. And then I decided that the most useful thing I could do with what I'd heard was find out whether it was the truth about who you are or just the truth about who you'd become when no one was asking anything of you." He was very still. "I'm sorry," he said. It came out barely above a whisper. "I know you are," I said. I could see it by April. He put his face in his hands. We sat in that diner for a while without talking, and I let him sit with it, because some things need to be sat with. When he lifted his head, his eyes were red. "I don't deserve the company," he said. "That's probably true," I said. "But deserving isn't always the point. The point is what you do with what you're given." I picked up my coffee. "You've got 4 more months. Finish what you started." He nodded. He didn't say anything else, and neither did I. We paid the check and walked out into the July heat, and he stopped on the sidewalk and hugged me the way he used to hug me when he was small with his whole body, not the careful one-armed thing grown men do. I hugged him back. The final months were the best months I can remember in the company in a long time. Not because the numbers were exceptional, though they were solid, but because I watched my son walk through those buildings the way I had walked through them, not as an accountant, not as an heir, but as someone who understood that those units were people's home, that the couple in Unit 7 had a new baby, that the man in the commercial strip had been in business for 17 years and deserved a landlord who showed up. By November, he had made 3 long-term capital improvements I had been putting off for years. He had also quietly started a policy of 24-hour maintenance response, which he implemented and funded from an efficiency he'd found in the vendor contracts. I did not tell him to do any of it. On the 1st of December, I met with my attorney. We reviewed 12 months of reports. We went line by line. When we were finished, my attorney looked at me over his glasses and said, "He did well." "He did," I said. "What do you want to do?" I told him. On December 15th, I called my son into my office, mine, the one with Carol's photograph, and I slid a document across the desk. Not handwritten this time. Formal. My attorney's letterhead. He picked it up. It was the transfer agreement. Full operational control, majority ownership stake, complete succession documentation. His name where mine had been for 37 years. He read it slowly. When he looked up, his eyes were bright. "Dad. There's one condition," I said. He waited. "You come to Thanksgiving early this year," I said, "and you bring good pie." He laughed. It was the laugh he'd had at 7 years old, standing in that first building, asking me why the ceilings were low. "Deal," he said. "I have thought a great deal, in the months since, about what I would have done if the 12 months had gone differently. If my son had remained the man I overheard on that back porch. I think about the charitable trust. I think about the professional management firm. I think about what Carol would have said. She would have said I did the right thing either way. Not because of the outcome, but because I didn't give up on him before I knew for certain who he was. That is the thing about people I have come to believe. They are not fixed. They are not finished. A man at 41 is not the same man he will be at 42, if someone cares enough to ask something of him. I spent 37 years building something with my hands and my credit and my stubbornness and the memory of a woman I loved. I did not want to leave it to someone who would sell it for a vacation. But I also did not want to leave it to a stranger. What I wanted, what I have always wanted, if I am being honest with myself, was to leave it to my son. It turns out, With enough time and enough honesty, and one overheard conversation on a cold porch in November, that is exactly what I got to do. Don't forget to subscribe to mt-sweetrevenge for more stories about real families, hard choices, and the kind of love that tells the truth even when it's painful. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today.